Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we're just sitting in the park. If you happen to see some kids flying by screaming and shouting, that's kind of what kids do on a sunny day in the park. But we're hoping they become better, well-behaved, and their parents do something about it.
Today in the morning we're filming this Monday bank holiday at 4:40 p.m. Today we ran a 10k race in central London. We should have put our medals on.
But the real goal of this filming is to
race back to Godhead.
Race back to Godhead. And to become well behaved so we can go back to Godhead.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh, in sync.
Yeah, maybe belong in a sync.
Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 15, The Glories of Devotional Service. It's a conversation at the moment between Kapila Muni and his mum Devahuti. Right, so verse 15, the state in which the consciousness of the living entity is attracted by the three modes of material nature is called conditional life. But when that same consciousness is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in the consciousness of liberation.
You see how easy it is. Either be attached to the material energy or be attached to the spiritual energy. One way you're conditioned, the other way you're liberating. Just change your mind.
I'll just read the purport.
Okay.
There is a distinction here between Krishna consciousness and Maya consciousness. Gunesu or Maya consciousness involves attachment to the three material modes of nature, under which one works sometimes in goodness and knowledge, sometimes in passion, and sometimes in ignorance. These different qualitative activities with the central attachment for material enjoyment are the cause of one's conditional life. When the same Chaita or consciousness is transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or when one becomes Krishna conscious, he is on the path of liberation.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's just as Prabhupada said, isn't it? Your desires can take you back to Krishna, or you can desire to go to hell.
Text 16. When one is completely cleansed of the impurities of lust and greed, produced from the false identification of the body as I, and bodily possessions as mine, one's mind becomes purified. In that pure state, he transcends the stage of so-called material happiness and distress. Purport. Kama and Lobha are the symptoms of material existence. Everyone always desires to possess something. It is said here that desire and greed are the products of false identification of oneself with the body. When one becomes free from this contamination, then his mind and consciousness also become free and obtain their original state. Mind, consciousness, and the living entity exist. Whenever we speak of the living entity, this includes the mind.
Your little teeny sausage jug.
Whenever we speak of the living entity, this includes the mind and consciousness. The difference between conditional life and liberated life occurs when we purify the mind and the consciousness. When they are purified, one becomes transcendental to material happiness and distress.
In the beginning, Lord Kapila has said that perfect yoga enables one to transcend the platform of material distress and happiness. How this can be done is explained here. One has to purify his mind and consciousness. This can be done by the Bhakti Yoga system. As explained in the Narada Pancharatra, one's mind and senses should be purified. Tat parat venam nirmalam. One's senses must be engaged in devotional service to the Lord. That is the process. The mind must have some service to the Lord. One cannot make the mind vacant. That's true. Of course, there are some foolish attempts to try to make the mind vacant or void, but that is not possible. The only process that will purify the mind is to engage it in Krishna. The mind must be engaged. If we engage our mind in Krishna, naturally the consciousness becomes fully purified and there is no chance of the entrance of material desire and greed.
If we engage our mind in Krishna, naturally consciousness becomes fully purified.
It's
There
so
is
true.
no chance.
So true when you're busy in Krishna consciousness. I don't mean, that means that, I just stop what I'm doing and read 10 hours a day. Chant, maybe, let's be honest, you can get bad eyesight as well, but just that thought of, like, if you're working, you give some Lakshmi, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be like hundreds of pounds, even if it's £5 a month, it don't matter, you're still purifying your work. It's not like Krishna says, it better be above the 40% tax rate or something, don't say that at all. Whatever is our means. When we're cooking or driving or whatever, walking down the street, you can plug in if need be within safety, but to listen to musical lectures or just sit in the park. If you look around, people are just, one man looks like he's looking at the bins, but you don't know, he might be thinking of Krishna. Hey, it's just so right in so many ways, that we can plug in.
It's true. I agree 100%. I guess the challenge is that we say that, if we engage our mind in Krishna, naturally the consciousness becomes full, and there is no chance of the entrance of material desire and greed. But yet we see that there are people who have been engaged in Krishna consciousness and Krishna service, maybe even to quite a high level, or a intense standard, or apparently fully absorbed, maybe even serving, Srila Prabhupada directly, and it seems like other things came in. So, somehow it means that the consciousness ultimately has to become somewhat, fully absorbed. Otherwise, there's always some chance for material energy to slip in. But the principle is there, obviously, that, I can't remember the Bengali or Sanskrit, but, Krishna is like the sun, which gives light, and ignorance or Maya is like darkness, which is source of ignorance. And where there is light, there can be no darkness, so like that. But I guess, just like today, in the back you can see a little bit of the sun, but over here there's some serious clouds coming, so there can be some aspect of gray in between the light and the darkness. So we need to encourage or fan that intense spark of Krishna consciousness, and when these other things do kind of creep in, and we may see them or they may knock at the door, then we need to not answer the door, and we need to have a clear exit strategy for getting away from these things, which may mean calling a friend, or calling out the holy name, or beating the heck out of a box, which is what's happening just across the street. I think people found an old suitcase by the dumpster, and they're eager to find out what might be in that. Like, you would leave a suitcase, obviously, with like £1 million.
That's the those green bins are recycle bins.
Yeah,
so why you need to bust open the suitcase?
Because
the kids are back.
People are eager. They have desires. They're hoping against hope that there's something inside of it.
Treasure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's read on. Text 17.
Text 17.
Mine. You read the last paragraph.
Oh. I'm just eager to read, like the bumblebee.
Eager. My brain is so lazy. Okay. Text 17. At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. Interesting. Purport. In the state of pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, non-different from the Supreme Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the jiva, or the individual soul, is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sun's rays are minute particles of the brilliant constitution of the sun, so a living entity is a minute particle of the Supreme Spirit. All divine sparks of the Lord's brilliant splendor. The individual soul and the Supreme Lord are not separated as in material differentiation. The individual soul is a particle from the very beginning. One should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fragmented from the whole spirit. Hope that makes sense to everyone. One should not, yes. Mayavad philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. That part, the jiva, is eternally apart. As long as the Supreme Spirit exists, his part and parcel also exist. As long as the sun exists, the molecules of the sun rays also exist. So anyway, there's more to the purport.
Next paragraph. The jiva particle is estimated in the Vedic literature to be 1/10,000th the size of the upper portion of a hair. It is therefore infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is infinite, but the living entity or the individual soul is infinitesimal, though it is not different in quality from the Supreme Spirit. Two words in this verse are to be particularly noted. One is nirantaram, which means non-different or of the same quality. The individual soul is also expressed here as animanam. Animanam means infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is all-pervading, but the very small spirit is the individual soul. Akhanditam means not exactly fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. No one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun, but at the same time the molecular part of the sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. Similarly, the living entity, by his constitutional position, is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but he is infinitesimal. So it's basically saying stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, because you ain't God. You are part of him. You are Sat Chit Ananda. You are eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. But stay in your lane, because you are. Those in from south will know what I'm saying. Because you ain't God.
Southern states.
No,
America.
South London.
And I got no idea.
South London. Stay in your lane. You know when someone tries to get a little bit too big for themselves? No, stay in your lane. So you ain't God. That's the point. You know, you're part of him and you ain't separated from him. That's the point Prabhupada's making. You know, even though you're fragmented, you're still connected. But that's about it.
Where I come from, they say ain't a word because it ain't in the dictionary. But anyway, that's another philosophy. It's interesting because after all of that stay in your lane, mate, business, I guess that's one way of putting it. I really understood that Prabhupada is really delineating the understanding of infinitesimal versus fragmented. which means that a fragment is something that's been broken away from and has become separated from. And may, like if you break something, a vase or a glass or a cup or a mug, and you want to put it back together, it becomes into fragments and you have to kind of glue them back together. Whereas what is being stated here, and Prabhupada is quoting the Acharyas, is that infinitesimal is attack of the killer bugs. Infinitesimal, it means it's a particle, it's a part of the whole, but it's just small, it's minute in size. Doesn't mean that it's broken away from the whole. Now that's difficult to understand, because as I try to use the same analogy of the mug, well, it's hard. It's hard to think of something that remains part of the whole but is so infinite and small that you don't actually see how it's attached, unless we discuss, I guess, things like molecules, which Prabhupada uses this term again and again, molecular. So it's molecular in size. So, if you were to look at under a microscope, a molecular microscope, you would see all these particles and you would think, oh look, it's fragmented. But no, it's not fragmented. All those particles make up the whole. So that's what I got. Of course, I really greatly appreciate the stay in your lane, mate, angle and perspective, but that was what I got from the reading. What did you get? You please share with us. Maybe we can have a little vote. How many people are like, yeah, mate, I'll go stay in your lane, mate. And how many people are like, yes, Joy, I think very much, yes.
Whatever side you bite the apple, it's still an apple.
Can't argue with that, mate. Oh, my dear Lord Shri Hari. Okay, let's see. How long is the next purport? I think we can squeeze one more in, or we could just call it a day and stay in our
I think only
lane.
because my legs might need to get up post running.
and to be honest, this cloud has
it is. It's cloudy. So we're going to go to Waitrose now.
Okay, so there you go. We'll stay in our lane. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Remember, please, like, comment, and subscribe.
What is it doing?
That's what dogs do after they do their job. Yeah. So, like, comment, subscribe, and more important than that is read the Grantha Raj, the Grantha, the book Raj, the king of books, Srimad Bhagavatam, and keep your consciousness focused on Krishna, so that calm and lobe, lust, and greed can't get in. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.